Hello, guten Tag und grüß Gott. Today is March the 6th, 2022, and a fine Sunday it is. We just had rain for a couple of days, so everything is looking up. What can be green is green until the summer hits again. But temperatures are going up right now. This morning it was like in the 50s, and now it's more like edging toward 70 something. Anyway, that's not exactly what I wanted to talk about as the weather, because we have a far more serious issue at hand. And the issue at hand really is that the Ukraine war keeps on going. And I call it the Ukraine war because it was a Russian invasion, and these people didn't want war. They weren't ready for war. They didn't do anything to the Russians that we know of. So it just seems like the innocent being sacrificed right now. But the thing is that the war isn't going well, even though it's in now for 2 weeks. And I think that there might have been some ideas in Russia that they would simply, amass their massive army at the border and then march in some troops, maybe bomb some facilities that could be a threat to them, to the Air Force and so forth, batteries of missiles and radar stations and who knows what. And Zelensky, the president, would just come and say, okay, here I am. What is it that you really want? I give up. Instead, the guy said, we will fight to the last man. In fact, he said that the government would remain in Kiev. And I call it Kiev because there's this controversy in my mind about what to really call it. Do we call it Kiev or do we call it Kyiv? Sometimes the news service, calls it Kyiv. And evidently the spelling, it's the same place. I've seen it on maps as Kiev, K-I-E-V. And now they're spelling it on maps as K-Y-I-V. And it's my understanding that the Russians have always kind of pronounced it as Kiev, but the Ukrainians call it Kyiv. So I don't know whether that shows your political stance on this. If you stand with the Russians, then you call it Kiev. Or if you're an old guy like me that remembers it as Kiev. Anyway, so that war is now in the second week, and things are not going well. The thought in the media is that Russia thought this would be a blitz and or a cakewalk, and it's neither, because the Russian troops are actually bogged down in front of Kiev, and but they're bombing the crap out of civilian buildings. They're bombing the crap out of military installations, etc. And so things are not good. They're not good for the Russians because they were hoping to get through this without loss of life or minimal loss of life. They did set up hospitals at the border, and so they're ready for some loss of life. But it's this war between this mighty Russia, which is actually the largest country geographically in the world, because if you look at a map of the world, Russia extends from west of the Ural Mountains all the way to they can almost kiss Alaska, and that is huge. I mean, that's a huge area. In fact, the Ukraine is also a pretty large area. They're about the size of Texas, and Texas is a pretty good state. You can, get on the property of the King Ranch in Texas, and in 3 days, you might be getting to a town somewhere, but you're still on the property of the King Ranch. So this is huge. Anyway, this particular war has already changed the world. some of the European countries doubling their defense budget. And, we thought that this kind of thing, between superpowers would be just about unthinkable because, superpowers have nuclear weapons, but that they would actually dare to invade somebody else's country. And of course, the Russians probably consider the Ukrainians as the cousins that belong to Russia. So anyway, this is really a bad deal. So I just wanted to show and memorialize how the press looks at this particular issue, and then we can get back into some of the what this war will mean potentially for humankind, actually. So here's the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to hold this up. Okay. You can stop that video and see this, but this was the day that the invasion started, Thursday the 24th of February. And there are three big headlines over the top. And the first one says, any provocation, any spark could trigger a blaze that will destroy everything. Who said that? The Ukrainian President Zelensky. We will strive to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Who said that? The Russian President Putin. Now, I just want to interject right here. You know that Zelensky is a Ukrainian Jew of, the Jewish ethnic group. And then the third headline here is, Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life. And that was said by President Biden. So there you have it. This is how the Ukrainians looked at it, the Russians looked at it, and the U.S. looked at it. Evidently, the Europeans don't matter, and it's happening right there. So, Anyway, so I just want to kind of go through that. That weekend, then Ukrainian troops battle, and the war intensified. And talks set to start as war rages. Now, this was the headline still that mentions war. Okay, and the reason I'm saying that is that the Russian parliament just made it illegal to call it a war. Okay, this is called a special operations. Now, if Putin wants to call it a war, why, he doesn't have to risk the penalties, which are, by the way, fairly stiff. There's a big monetary fine, but probably the worst is 15 years prison term. Okay, so if you say the word war, okay, that this is a war, because Russia now considers certain kind of news fake news, and if you support and do fake news, then it's that prison term. Okay, so anything that is fake news, and of course, who determines fake news? Well, I guess Putin does. So if he says this is fake news, and you have, if any of his cronies around him, now stumble and say, we ought to stop this war or something, that's fake news. And they might find themselves in jail, or maybe swallow a polonium pill or something. Something bad's going to happen, because Putin is really kind of a badass when it comes to, tolerating dissenting opinions, if you will. Okay. So let me just go through this again. So that was the last time that was mentioned war. And now the press, I don't know whether they're afraid of Putin, but assault intensifies as talks end. Talks have ended. And the talks were really about what to do with these refugees, because now we have over 1.5 million or so refugees at the Polish border and all over the place in Moldova and some of those other countries except Belarus, because they're on the Russian side. They're already in the Russians' pocket. So Lithuania, everybody's going to be having to deal with the onslaught of the refugees. Here again, the headlines: Russia hammers civilian targets. Bad news, but it's not a war, right? Russian strikes exact heavy toll. And you see some of the pictures, people are hiding out in train stations and so forth. I do remember that, and I remember, seeing some short videos, of people getting on trains. Well, that was really nice, that they can get on trains. I want to take you back to our flight, which I've mentioned in this video. And yeah, we also took trains, except our trains were open cattle cars that were used for hauling cattle around. And they didn't bother taking the cattle shit out of there. So we were standing in cattle shed and stuff. And if it rained, well, you just kind of put your something over you or so, mom took care of something, But the one thing, that we, and by the way, I have my wife Marge here. I like to have somebody, a living being, with me when I do these videos. And by the way, what we're talking about, is what we see right now is, where the real strength in society lives. And it lives in the moms. The moms that are taking care of their children, of their loved ones, and so forth. The guys, well, they're not allowed to leave right now. If you're of an age, of draft age, or so, you can't leave because you're being conscripted into the army. Well, that's really easy. You get 3 squares. You don't have to look for meals. Yeah, you might get killed. Okay, so that's bad shit. But your daily life is kind of, roof over your head, uniforms, and all that kind of stuff. Not so for the moms. The moms have to make things happen on their own. They have to figure out, where can I now get food for my children? And some of them are really, there were some children who were already born in subway stations and stuff like that. So this is really terrible. Just going back to taking the train, so when we left the Sudetenland by train, we were shuffled around for 2 weeks because, Germany was in shambles and there was, the tracks were busted and stuff like this. So they didn't know what to do with us, but we wanted to go west, okay? Now, Germany wasn't that far away. We probably could have walked there faster than going by train, but we had stuff. We had, my mom was in charge of 5 wooden boxes, large wooden boxes that she couldn't lift herself. How did she get them lifted? Get them in there. Ingenious. One of the things, that my dad did is he provided one of the boxes was full of cigarettes. And she was able to open part of it, close it back up again, and use cigarettes as coinage. And she would hire guys that were hanging out there and stuff that wanted to smoke, and because cigarettes were rare. And so that's how she paid for the help to bring the boxes. And I still remember, of course it scared the shit out of me, that she kept having to go back for more boxes and stuff like this. And so I cried my head off, so I was, 4 going on 5, 5 years old or so. I cried my head off because I didn't know whether she's going to come back, and then I'm by myself doing what? And you know what she said to me? She said, good, keep on crying because I know which car you're in. Yeah, so the moms. So, yeah, it's not a blitz. The people are in trouble. And let's see what else we got here. Well, Russia escalates the assault. So this isn't going away real quick. And what does it say? Ukraine special forces stymie Russia's on Kyiv's front lines. And there's this huge convoy that you can see on the internet of Russian military vehicles that are being stopped, from getting into Kiev right now. Maybe they ran out of fuel. Maybe, who knows why they're stopped actually. But, they say the special forces have something to do with it. But then I want to show you. So this is the mainstream press that is afraid of the polonium pill, maybe. Okay, that's an extreme way to say that. But they're not calling it a war anymore. Except this newspaper right here, which is called the Epoch Times. And we just got that. This is, March 2nd to the 8th. War in Ukraine. Okay? So, what's my point here? My point is that you have the mainstream media, which is basically a liberal megaphone. I'm not saying that to be really mean about it, because it's actually true. Okay? So that's a fact. And then we have a right-wing media called the Epoch Times. And so you would think, if you read that, the Epoch Times, and you read the Wall Street Journal, the liberal media, you have the whole truth. Okay? You got the truth from the left, you got the truth from the right. That's got to be, but there is only the right and left, right, on a plane. Well, maybe up and down in a three, space, or in our space. But anyway, well, the point is, that they all have their agenda. So you really have to figure out, what's what. Just one more news item, guys. This is really fascinating. So I talked to you about Queen Elizabeth, and I saved this paper because, first time I saw television. But this is kind of interesting, and I will just read this to you. In this fishy story, a goldfish drives a vehicle down the street. Okay? Neuroscientists learn how brains adapt by putting creatures in the driver's seat. In fact, other neuroscientists have taught rats to drive cars as part of experiments testing how the brain works. Okay. And there you have it. Isn't that fascinating? Well, I don't have to elaborate on that, because you can just Google it, and you can find all the information you want about goldfish driving cars, rats driving cars. What next? And here, humans are going away from driving cars with autonomous driving and Tesla and so on. It's a neat world. I'm glad that in my 80 years around, is that I'm able to experience all this, because it's funnier than friggin' hell. Anyway, I do want to tone down the levity a bit, because I really wanted to talk about some of my siblings a little bit. And this isn't an anniversary or anything like this, but this whole thing about refugees and so forth, reminded me of what happened to us in Czechoslovakia, now Czechoslovakia then. It was Czechoslovakia before, but while we were there, it was the Sudetenland, and it became Czechoslovakia again. Okay. And this town called Switau that I talked about last time, where we started our 2-week horror journey to freedom, so to speak. Okay. Anyway, so I was born in 1939, and in 1938, my mom had a child. It was also I think, let me double check on this, because I have some notes here on this. So I was born in July of 39, and a year later, my mom, I was thinking it was Irish twins or something, but almost, So she had Heinz Peter, and he didn't make it. He was born. It wasn't stillborn. He was recorded as a live birth, but he didn't make it. He died. He died shortly after birth. I don't really know the details too much. But in 1942, Heinz was born. And by the way, we're talking about Heinz Peter, that was his name. Heinz was born. And then in 1955, Peter was born. So, we got our sibling names back, because, we had a prolific mom, yeah? I'm the oldest of 5. Anyway, so Heinz was a really an interesting kid because he evidently was endowed with some special gifts. He was highly intelligent. He only made it to about 2.5 years, okay? But he was highly intelligent. He was very vocal. He was thoughtful. And my parents made no bones about the fact that he was a hell of a lot smarter than I was, and I was the older one, okay? And, you might think, that, oh, shit, that's got to hurt your feelings and all that kind of stuff. It's just devastating, how your parents could say that this kid was smarter than you, because normally they say, oh, I love you all both. They're all equally smart and so forth, but you wouldn't tell somebody he's dumb, Well, they told me I was, because, here's one thing, is they couldn't send me to the store to buy anything. They had to send Heinz. Now, I was 4, going on 5, and he was 2, going on 3. Okay? So, and they would send him to the store. He'd come back with the right change and everything. Whereas evidently they must have had a bad experience with it. I don't remember losing the money, but probably did or something. Maybe I gave it away. Who knows what I did. But anyway, and he invented all the games, and my mom and my dad both. My mom was a little cautious about this, but my dad, was pretty open about it, Well, he invented all the games. He taught you all kinds of stuff, And I have to say, that was a fact, I'm not hurt by that, because I know there are smarter people than I, and just Heinz happened to be the smarter one. Okay, so we both get diphtheria, and we were taken into the hospital. And so that was then in December of 1944. So the war was coming to an end. We were still in Switow. The Russians had already come in, so we were right there at the end. Somehow we got diphtheria, I remember being there in the hospital, Heinz to my right, and I was to his left, and he was singing songs, but mostly melodies, because Mom came in, and said, "You're singing like an angel," Now, the thing is that here was Heinz, almost 2.5 years old, approximately 2.5 years old, and he knew he was dying. Because I remember what he said to my mom, and Mom repeated it often enough, to where this is a really good memory, that, "Don't worry, Mom, you'll get another one like me." So he was more concerned about her feelings than his own, I wonder what he would have been. Would he have been an Elon Musk? Who knows? Jesus. So anyway, I guess it just wasn't his time. Of course, I have no idea, what can you speculate about Heinz? No. I do have to say this, that all 5 of us are pretty smart, okay? We all went through college and so on, And maybe my brother John, the littlest one, who seems to be really smart, is a reincarnation of Heinz, because scholastically, school came easy to John, probably the easiest, Didn't come so easy for me because I usually had to scramble because I didn't do the homework, and I said, "Oh, Jesus," So that was it. And of course, when you have to mention loss, I also have to mention my brother Walter, who was born in 1944. in June, so he was already alive when Heinz was still alive, just a few months. But Walter was a baby, and so in a way, because he was so young, he was probably spared the horrors of the refugee times. So was Heinz, for that matter. So, but and I had to go through it. I guess it helps to not be that smart.
What are the order of your 5 siblings, or of the 5 children?
Well, I'm the oldest. I was born in 1939, and the next one, of course, was Heinz Peter, in 40, and it was Heinz in 1940, and then Walter was born in 44, and then Heidi, oh God, she was born in 1948. Heidi, if you're listening to this, I just gave up your age, so sorry about that, but hey, I love you. Okay, remember that. I love you. Anyway, yeah, so she come around in 1948, and there was a really interesting story about that, actually. What I remember is that before my mom went to the hospital to have Heidi, my mom thought that she wouldn't make it, and she was crying a lot, and I'm not sure why she thought that, although she did have, in German it's called Blutsturz. She had some sort of a perforated ulcer or something. She was throwing up blood, real blood, and they had to take her to the hospital, but they fixed that somehow, But there was something really going on with her stomach. So, but what she did is, before she went to have Heidi, so she had collected little things, and one of the things that I remember is I watched her do this. She was crying, and she had a little booty, a shoe, in her hand, and she wrote in ink the word Heidi on it, because she had picked that name out. She was sure. Now, she didn't know the gender. She was sure this is going to be a girl, okay? And she wrote that name, Heidi, on that. And specifically, what I remember is that the ink from, we had these ink wells, the ink from when she made the I over the first I in Heidi, H-I, it made a big blob, and she says, oops, And I remember that, because that's what it was. And sure enough, after a while, Heidi came along. Mom was fine. We had our little daughter. I mean, she had a little daughter. We had our sister, our only sister, And it had to have been a bitch for her to grow up with of all boys. I'm sure we gave her a lot of grief from time to time. But anyway, yeah, as a matter of fact, she remembered that I shot out the teeth in her doll. Oh, Jesus, with an air rifle, okay, Anyway, yeah. So and then Pete was born in March of 1955, and so so Heidi and Pete were both born in Marbach. Walter was born in Rodin, Poland. I was born in Skierz, Poland. Gurnau, Skierz, depending on. When I was born, it was Gurnau. So but they still mention Skierz because my birth certificate has both names on it, So, but anyway, but this was an area of that belonged to Prussia, belonged to Germany at one time, and after World War I, it reverted back to Poland because Poland became a nation again. Before then, Poland didn't exist for a couple hundred years. Anyway. The people existed, the area existed, and they know they were Polish and all that kind of stuff. But as a nation, they didn't exist because, it was Prussia and Russia. I think there was a little sliver of something called Poland, but I'm not sure about that. And then, of course, in 1957 in Pekin, Illinois, Brother John was born, and that I think I did a video on Brother John. birth, because Walter and I were just totally surprised, that, hey, we have another brother. How in the hell did that happen? Who knew about this, Mom was a little bit, she wasn't really a fat woman, but she was housefrowish, maybe, you know what I mean? So she kind of hid that pregnancy, I mean, it was, I don't know, we just didn't pay that much attention, I guess. So, I said this was a more somber note, here I am laughing about all this kind of stuff, but yeah, we're still here, Walter went through Vietnam, and that was ultimately is what killed him back in 2009. He died in December of 2009. Heinz died in December of 1944. And Heinz Peter died in December 1940. Darn. This is how things work. Well, anyway, I didn't intend to make this video quite so long, but there it is. It went for another 30 minutes. So with that, I hope you get something out of this, because I really enjoy making these things. And thank you very much for hanging in here with me, my wonderful wife, Marge. And thank you for asking that question that you did. So I will leave you again. So long, and may we infect the universe with us.